Today, we're breaking down every single Super Star Destroyer class, from the Republic era all the way through the First Order, across both canon and legends. We'll cover their specifications, their famous battles, and the design philosophy that made them so terrifyingly effective. Let's jump in. Let's start with the king of them all, the Executor Class Star Dreadnought. At 19,000 meters long, this beast was Darth Vader's personal flagship and the stuff of rebel nightmares. The Executor Class was the brainchild of Lyra Wessex, the brilliant engineer who had already designed the Venator and Imperial-class Star Destroyers. But Wessex wanted to push starship design even further, adhering to Kuat Drive Yard's philosophy of psychological warfare through what they called terror styling. The idea was simple. If a regular Star Destroyer could intimidate through sheer size, imagine what a ship 5 times larger could accomplish. Here's what made the Executor so devastating. Its armament was absolutely unparalleled. Over 5,000 turbo lasers, meaning it had literally 100 times the firepower of a regular Imperial Star Destroyer. The ship carried over 1,000 starfighters, including 144 TIE Series fighters organized into 12 full squadrons. But the Executor wasn't just about raw firepower. It served as a mobile command center, capable of coordinating entire Imperial fleets across multiple star systems. The ship's city-like superstructure housed everything from strategic planning centers to manufacturing facilities. The most famous vessel of this class was, of course, the Executor itself, Vader's personal flagship. According to Rebel intelligence, at least a dozen Executor-class ships were constructed, including the Annihilator, Arbitrator, and Ravager. However, due to Imperial secrecy, the true number remained unknown. The Executor met its end during the Battle of Endor in spectacular fashion. After sustaining heavy damage from Admiral Akbar's fleet, an A-Wing fighter exploited the ship's defensive trenches to crash directly into the bridge. With its command structure crippled, the massive dreadnought was caught in the Death Star's gravitational pull and destroyed. If the Executor was terrifying, the Eclipse Class was absolutely apocalyptic. Serving as Emperor Palpatine's personal flagship, the Eclipse marked a new generation of Super Star Destroyer technology. At 17.5 kilometers long, the Eclipse was actually shorter than the Executor, but it had far greater mass, especially toward the front of the ship, and there was a very good reason for that bulk. The Eclipse carried a scaled-down version of the Death Star's super laser. The axial super laser was capable of destroying planetary shields and vaporizing massive sections of a planet's surface with a single blast. During one demonstration of its power, the Eclipse destroyed the Executor-class Star Destroyer Annihilator with just one shot. Think about that for a moment. A weapon so powerful it could one-shot another Super Star Destroyer. The Eclipse's crew complement was staggering, over 700,000 personnel, more than double what was required to operate an Executor class. It carried 600 TIE interceptors, 96 TIE bombers, and even the experimental Shadow Droid starfighters. Only 2 Eclipse-class ships were ever produced. The first Eclipse was destroyed in 10 ABY when Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia disrupted Palpatine's control over a force storm he had summoned. The raging energy spiraled out of control, consuming both the ship and the reborn Emperor. The Eclipse II was brought forward to replace its predecessor, but met an equally dramatic end. Lando Calrissian and Wedge Antilles led a boarding team onto the ship, and with R2-D2's help, they sent the Eclipse II into hyperspace on a collision course with the Galaxy Gun, destroying both superweapons in the process. The Sovereign class was intended to be a smaller, more streamlined version of the Eclipse. At 15,000 meters in length, it was designed to be faster to construct and deploy in greater numbers than its massive predecessor. Like the Eclipse, the Sovereign class was equipped with a scaled-down Death Star superlaser, making it a planet-killing weapon in its own right. The Empire hoped that by making it smaller than the Eclipse, they could complete construction faster and field multiple vessels. However, with Palpatine's death and the fragmentation of the Empire, these plans never came to fruition. The lead ship, simply called Sovereign, was still under construction at the Biss shipyards when the Emperor launched Operation Shadowhand aboard the completed Eclipse instead. Other planned ships in the Sovereign class included vessels with ominous names like Despot and Heresy, though none were ever completed. The Sovereign class represents one of the Empire's many ambitious projects that were cut short by their own overreach. The Mandator class holds a special place in Star Wars history, as the first starship to officially receive the designation of Dreadnought. This class evolved through multiple variants, from the original Mandator used during the Clone Wars all the way to the Mandator IV deployed by the First Order. The original Mandator class was created by Kuat Drive Yards as essentially a showpiece for system defense fleets. Even before the Clone Wars, wealthy core worlds and sectors would commission these massive vessels to project power and deter potential threats. During the Clone Wars, the Mandator class was far larger and more heavily armored than the Venator class Star Destroyer, though it was produced in much smaller numbers due to its immense cost. By the time of the Galactic Empire, the Mandator III was specifically designed as a massive weapons platform, measuring 12,000 meters in length with shields comparable to those of the Executor Class. But it was the First Order's Mandator IV that truly showcased the evolution of this design philosophy. At over 7,600 meters long, it was 2.5 times the length of a Resurgent-class Star Destroyer. Admiral Akbar himself claimed it had more firepower than a dozen Star Destroyers. The Mandator IV's most fearsome weapons were its orbital autocannons, which could fire 2 powerful salvos before requiring a recharge. These weapons were capable of obliterating planetary deflector shields and vaporizing massive chunks of planetary crust. During the siege of Dakar, we saw exactly how devastating these weapons could be against the Resistance base. The famous Mandator IV Dreadnought Fulminatrix was ultimately destroyed by Poe Dameron and the Resistance bombers, but not before it had demonstrated the terrifying effectiveness of First Order engineering. If we're talking about sheer scale, nothing in Star Wars history comes close to the Supremacy. Supreme Leader Snoke's personal flagship was classified as a mega-class Star Dreadnought, and the name was entirely appropriate. The Supremacy measured an absolutely mind-boggling 60 kilometers in width and nearly 13 kilometers in length. To put that in perspective, it was large enough to carry 8 Resurgent-class Star Destroyers, 6 within its aft wings, and 2 internally. The ship had a crew complement of over 2 million personnel, making it the most heavily populated warship in galactic history. The Supremacy wasn't just a warship, it was essentially a flying city that served as the de facto capital of the First Order. It housed Supreme Leader Snoke's throne room, complete with those memorable Praetorian guards, and contained everything needed to govern a galactic government. The ship's destruction during The Last Jedi was equally spectacular. Admiral Holdo's sacrifice, ramming the Raddus into the Supremacy at light speed, split the massive dreadnought in 2. Despite sustaining catastrophic damage, the Supremacy remained functional after the attack. But the First Order ultimately abandoned it as too heavily damaged to repair. Beyond the main classes, several specialized Super Star Destroyer variants deserve mention for their unique roles and capabilities. The Allegiance-class battlecruiser was designed as a heavily fortified alternative to traditional Star Destroyers, built for one brutal purpose: smashing and destroying large enemy capital ships. At 2,200 meters in length, it was notably larger than an Imperial class, but smaller than most Super Star Destroyers. What made the Allegiance class absolutely lethal was its complete lack of ventral hangar bays. Like the Executor Class, it ditched starfighter deployment entirely in favor of devastating firepower that could punch through any enemy formation. This beast packed extra octuple turbo laser batteries on each side, plus heavy trench and axial guns mounted on swiveling platforms similar to the Bellator class. The ship's dorsal superstructure was longer, wider, and more heavily armored than standard destroyers, giving it that distinctive squat, predatory appearance. Those gun batteries running up the spine had excellent firing arcs, making it a nightmare for any capital ship foolish enough to engage it head-on. The Allegiance could take on anything short of a Super Star Destroyer in single combat, though it needed fighter support to cover its flanks against smaller, more agile threats. The Vengeance class took a radically different approach to Super Star Destroyer design, abandoning the traditional Imperial philosophy of overwhelming bulk for something far more sinister. At 19 kilometers long, matching the Executor's length, but with a dramatically slender, sword-like profile. This ship was built for a very specific purpose, reminding ambitious Dark Jedi of their place in the Imperial hierarchy. Emperor Palpatine personally commissioned the class as a calculated insult to Jarek, the Dark Jedi who would command the flagship Vengeance. While visually striking with its narrow, dagger-shaped hull, lacking the cityscape superstructure of the Executor, the ship was purposely designed smaller and less imposing than Palpatine's own flagship. This wasn't just naval architecture, it was psychological warfare. The Emperor wanted Jarek to feel his insignificance every time he walked the bridge of his lesser dreadnought. Despite its political origins, the Vengeance class packed serious firepower and extensive TIE fighter complements. Most of these ships remained hidden in the deep core, emerging only during Operation Shadowhand, when multiple Vengeance class vessels joined the massive assault fleet that would reshape the galaxy. It represented the Empire's attempt to supplement their Stormtrooper Corps with more reliable, programmable soldiers. The Executor Class Star Dreadnought was a 15-kilometer arrow of destruction and the Empire's second most powerful warship, surpassed only by the legendary Executor Class. Built by Kuat Drive Yards between 19 and 3 BBY, these massive vessels represented the Empire's experimental phase with super heavy battle cruisers. With their distinctive elongated hull and prominent dorsal ridge, Assertors were designed as mobile command centers and sector patrol ships. Each one carried 125,000 crew members, 20,000 troops, and 120 starfighters, essentially a floating city of Imperial might. The armament was staggering. Hundreds of turbo laser batteries, ion cannons, and missile launchers created overlapping fields of fire that could devastate entire fleets. Only a handful were ever constructed, including the lead ship Executor and its sister vessel Wrath, both deployed along the mid-outer rim border during the Galactic Civil War. Then there's the Archammer, which wasn't technically classified as a Super Star Destroyer, but certainly qualified by size and sheer intimidation factor. At 9,600 meters long and 3,000 meters high, this monstrous vessel was General Ram Mok's answer to the Empire's manpower problems, a mobile death factory that could churn out unstoppable robotic soldiers faster than the rebellion could destroy them. Rather than focusing on traditional ship-to-ship combat, the Archammer was designed as an orbital nightmare, manufacturing and deploying Phase 2 Dark Troopers directly above target worlds. These weren't your typical battle droids. They were towering, armored killing machines made from frick alloy, one of the few lightsaber-resistant materials in the galaxy. The ship's bizarre appearance reflected its function: 4 massive vertical columns surrounding a central spire, housing automated assembly lines, conveyor belts, and construction facilities that operated around the clock. The vessel packed serious defensive firepower with 200 heavy turbo laser batteries and 300 ion cannons, making it more than capable of defending itself while it manufactured doom. Its 4 ventral hangars could deploy dark troopers in hyperspace capsules that exploded after deployment, adding insult to injury for any defending forces below. While most people associate Super Star Destroyers with the Empire, the concept actually originated during the Republic era. The Acclimator class military transports that first appeared at the end of Attack of the Clones were essentially proto-Star Destroyers, designed to transport clone troopers to battlefields throughout the Clone Wars. The Venator class Star Destroyers that featured prominently in Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars animated series represented the Republic's first true capital ships. While heavily armed, they were slightly less oppressive in design than their Imperial successors, reflecting the Republic's more defensive military philosophy. These early designs established many of the principles that would later define Super Star Destroyer construction. The distinctive wedge shape, the emphasis on psychological intimidation through scale, and the integration of massive hangar facilities for deploying ground forces. At 1,137 meters long, the Venator struck the perfect balance between carrier and battleship, a dual-role design that made it devastatingly effective during the Clone Wars. Unlike the later Imperial-class destroyers that prioritized raw firepower, the Venator's genius lay in its versatility. Those massive dorsal hangar bays could deploy entire fighter wings or drop ATTE walkers directly onto planetary surfaces through ventral bay doors. The ship's dual command bridges weren't just aesthetic, they represented tactical brilliance. The starboard bridge commanded naval operations, while the port bridge coordinated fighter squadrons, allowing simultaneous fleet and carrier management. This redundancy also provided backup command capability, addressing the vulnerability that would later plague single-bridge Imperial designs. What made the Venator truly formidable was its 192 fighter capacity combined with 8 heavy turbo laser turrets. It could engage capital ships while launching coordinated fighter strikes, a combined arms approach that defined Republic naval doctrine. The Venator proved that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the biggest gun, but the most adaptable platform. What made Super Star Destroyers so effective wasn't just their raw power, it was the psychological impact they had on both enemies and allies. The Empire understood that sometimes the mere presence of a Super Star Destroyer in a system was enough to prevent rebellion without firing a shot. This concept of terror styling influenced every aspect of their design. The harsh, angular architecture was deliberately reminiscent of authoritarian regimes, while the gray and white color schemes reinforced a feeling of cold, corporate efficiency. These weren't just warships, they were symbols of imperial power made manifest. The effectiveness of this approach can be seen in how other factions adopted similar design principles. The First Order's ships clearly drew inspiration from Imperial designs, while even the New Republic found itself building larger and more imposing vessels to counter the threat of Imperial remnants. So whether you're talking about Vader's legendary Executor, Palpatine's apocalyptic Eclipse, or Snoke's city-sized Supremacy, each of these vessels tells a story about power, ambition, and the eternal struggle between freedom and tyranny that defines the Star Wars saga. So, which Super Star Destroyer is your favorite? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the Star Wars universe. Until next time, may the Force be with you.